Today, I want to talk about an ever growing plague that is upon us in the internet world. Now, we're all familiar with the MAGA people, that slavishly cultish, parasocial devotion to Donald Trump, and we all know by now all of their tactics. Embrace of any kind of narrative, regardless of how true it is, their ability to basically whitewash any actions that he has done, regardless of how idiotic, psychotic, or outright sociopathic or Machiavellian they are. However, this is also a phenomenon with the, I'm going to use quotes, left on the other side. And that is what I would like to explain today, which is the concept of Blue MAGA. Now, what is Blue MAGA, you ask? Well, you may already kind of be familiar with them. There's a lot of other terms for them. Let's see. There's shit libs, champagne socialists. I like progressives personally. Like faux and like progressive, but you put it with a faux, which means okay. So basically, Blue MAGA is a group of people who identify as mostly liberals, really. And these are mostly people who have the same kind of cult-like adherence to the liberal ruling party. Essentially, what MAGA and Blue MAGA kind of have in common, whether wittingly or unwittingly, is that they're basically keeping us from fighting a class war by fighting a culture war. And they keep pushing us into these red and blue camps where we fight amongst each other. And like George Carlin brilliantly told us decades ago, the rich keep going to the bank. Now, there's a couple of huge problems with Blue MAGA. First and foremost, one being that Blue MAGA has a habit of shepherding people who would otherwise identify as progressive, socialist, or even communist, firmly cemented in a major liberal party, whether that party be, the Democratic Party in the States, or up here, the Liberal Party of Canada, which fucking sucks. The main point here is basically to keep everybody playing team sports. The main reason this is so dangerous is because it keeps everybody playing this red or blue game, whereas in reality, a lot of people would have given up and found another option, like the Green Party or any other number of parties that are more labor intensive as opposed to just kind of propping up the ruling class. Now, here on this channel, I try to keep things as nonpartisan as possible, but my personal belief is that whether you're red team or blue team, which weirdly up here in Canada is reverse, because like the conservatives are blue and the liberals are red. I personally firmly believe in any kind of political party that fully supports the working class. And I think the major political parties we at least have here in North America have abandoned doing that a long time ago. Whether it's a pittance from the lefter side of things or going fully mask off on the right side of things, we're not really faced with a lot of good options. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to provide some examples of Blue MAGA. And in those examples, I'm kind of going to explain the dynamics you can see on Twitter and Reddit and how you can spot out Blue MAGA. And best of all, how to defend yourself against the ever-growing rampage of violent shit libbery we're seeing across the internet. Now, this example right here is referring to the recent student debt forgiveness, which most sane people will just refer to as some fucking crumbs that Biden famously ran on in his campaign as a promise to the American people. Now, what's happening right now, as you may see, is there's a lot of collective gaslighting when it comes to this in particular, insofar as instead of the 10K that was being forgiven, there's a narrative being purported that this was what Biden intended the entire time, whereas in reality, he did promise to forgive the full amount, at least for certain income demographics. Now, the main reason I presume that this specific Twitter user is asking for a picture of his campaign website is because they are trying to counter the narrative that is being pushed. That narrative basically being that Biden didn't ever intend to do this. Being the good proletariat I am, I did provide some press receipts here, and here you see Blue MAGA in the wild, looking for any chance to reproduce shit libbery onto the hellscape that is the Bird app. Who looks a 10K gift horse in the mouth? Republicans won't be offering any help. For some reason, this is kind of a habit. They'll always just post like a weird meme thing. I don't know who makes these, like a DNC intern, fucking probably. I clap back with, you shouldn't complain about broken campaign promises because the other party sucks even more continues to be a staggeringly dishonest take. And of course, what Brenda here is trying to do is she's effectively trying to keep people playing the red-blue game. Now, what most Blue MAGA will typically do is that they'll recognize that their party probably isn't delivering as well as they should, once the gaslighting fails, of course, because once you clap them on the gaslighting and remind them, no, actually, this was the campaign promise, they have to resort to other tactics. But the whole point, the meat and potatoes of the game, is to keep people in this red-blue playing field, so that the talk of perhaps voting another party, one that might primarily favor the working class and put the needs of citizens in front of the needs of oligarchs, might actually happen. Now, whether these are good-meaning people who have been manipulated, narcissists who just look at it as a source of validation, or troll farms and DNC shills who are looking to keep the oligarchy in charge, there is a vested interest in keeping the ruling class exactly where they are. And that is because most people benefit from that happening. A golden rule that I would like to pass on to everybody else that I learned a long time ago from someone who is far smarter than myself is that you can't trust anyone to change the status quo if they themselves are benefiting from the status quo. That is just a fucking fact. And it is a fact that has been reinforced decade after decade as we see the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. So as you can see, she kind of acknowledges that politicians make broken promises and whatever, but then if you look afterward, she clearly pivots to, oh, but the other team is worse. This is kind of the same thing that both parties use against the other one, but the whole point's the same. They're basically doing the lesser of two evils trope. And the only way to get people to snap out of this is reminding them that you don't have to choose the lesser of two evils. Now, as you can see here, she's responding to me, posting another one of these really cringe, like DNC operative memes. Bonus cringe points for the riding with Biden, because, like, I'm sure anyone who's actually on the left actually wanted this fucking guy in office. Sorry, it's funny to think of. Pretend or not, they usually deliver help and value for our tax dollars. This, of course, in the context of the billions upon billions of dollars that are being used to fund the military-industrial complex and go into big pharma. So that's just kind of one example. Now here's another example of not Blue MAGA in the original tweet. I think this is kind of just a misinterpretation. So the claim here was that Biden borrowed some of the policies leftists have been calling on him to implement, and I had to clap him on that because this wasn't something that was suddenly adapted by the DNC. This is something that was straight up promised from day one. So as I make a correction, you can see down here that people are starting to do that famous Blue MAGA gaslighting. Well, a lot of people say conservatives, and especially Donald Trump himself, are kind of the kings of gaslighting. I've got to say, Blue MAGA is probably just as good at it, if not better. You are lying. He specifically ran on $10,000, and Kamala ran on $20,000 for Pell recipients. And of course, you got to bring out the receipts, which you can find on this clown's fucking website itself, which promised, of course, to forgive all undergraduate tuition-related federal student debt from 2- and 4-year public colleges and universities for debt holders earning up to $125,000. And of course, we have another Blue MAGA skipping in here and saying, you missed the paragraph under part 2, which is another attempt at gaslighting, because we all have actual videos of this being promised. Now right here, I'd like to show off another tactic of the Blue MAGA people, and that is pushing people who go too far left back a little further right. Because what they're saying now is these burners don't read all that well. Of course, they're referring to people who support Senator Bernie Sanders and a lot of his policies, which a lot of Blue MAGA doesn't like because that's too far left. Everybody has their opinions, but it is my belief personally that the squad, Bernie Sanders, etc., these people exist within the DNC basically just as a safety net for disillusioned lefties who are kind of tired of the same DNC bullshit, of broken promises, and endless money to their corporate benefactors. As such, what they need to do from here is they need to other everyone who isn't in that specific category and put them into another box that they can easily dismantle. Now you see the same Twitter account who kind of provided backup for the other Blue MAGA human, giving pretty much the exact same gaslighting talking point here. which I replied to in the same fashion because I get really tired of this crap. I will say it's really hard to differentiate if these are people who are kind of just being manipulated directly by bad faith actors or if they're bad faith actors themselves. As I covered in my previous video, there is a metric shit ton of troll farms on Twitter. There's also a fair bit of bots as well. And if you've ever actually argued with a bot, it's probably the weirdest experience ever. Next, of course, to contacting Amazon customer support. I work in CX, so I can make that joke. This is another habit of Blue MAGA, especially from the people with this kind of weird, like, first name plus a bunch of numbers. And also 0 followers is just weird and creepy right off the bat. Probably not an organic human, let's put it that way. So another thing Blue MAGA is probably going to do, and they're going to do it to you a lot, is they will double down on the gaslighting in order to get optics wins. A big trend I've noticed in bad faith on the internet in general is optics seem far more important than actually getting to the truth or being successful in discourse with other people or winning an argument. If it looks more attractive, because there's other people who are probably reading the thread, they'll usually opt for these tactics. They will also insult your intelligence quite a bit. Once you disprove the main talking point they have, the only thing they really have is to attack you personally. More on that later. But also, it's important to note that Blue MAGA also will go mask off at some point if they feel frustrated enough and their talking points aren't really going unchallenged, such as this lovely bit of transphobia right here, where they, I guess, attack me for being too left, which is, as I said, an ongoing trend. So another thing is, the further along you get with kind of dismantling these talking points, or for lack of a better word, logical fallacies that they love using, they'll start getting nastier and nastier and literally just start attacking you. And as you can see here, it gets to the point where they don't really have anything else left to say. So they're essentially going to pretend that Biden is too stupid or dementia-ridden, which is probably true, to make good on his campaign promises. At that point, you just have to call them out for being fucking manipulative, because you know the conversation's over. A golden rule to kind of save your sanity for any kind of discourse online is the second someone starts personally attacking you, you've probably won that argument. So right here, I'd like to point out another very common tactic when it comes to Blue MAGA, and that's the concept of the secret conservative. Basically, this happens to anyone who's further left of Blue MAGA or anyone who points out any holes in the narrative they're trying to push. So here you have the intolerable Sink being as intolerable as he possibly fucking can be, and someone correctly clapping him and saying Joe Rogan has said many times that he's a lefty. And this is another Blue MAGA tactic as well, to basically come in and say, oh, they're not actually left, they're just saying that. Secretly, they're conservative. And basically what they're saying there is, because you're not following whatever script the DNC or the Liberal Party of Canada or whatever brunch crew oligarchs tell you, that you're actually a conservative. It's a very common tactic to kind of make them feel like they have to adhere to a narrative because it doesn't follow party lines. This is actually known in psychology as splitting, and it's a common tactic that we've seen time and time over. Growing up, you heard it from Bush and other people saying you're either with us or you're against us. It's basically putting someone either in your camp or the enemy camp, and this happens in both parties quite a bit. The only real way to deal with being called a conservative when you obviously are far left than the person calling you a conservative is to just call it out. That's the only thing you can do here. There is no such thing as a secret lefty except in the fever dreams of right-wing projectors. So basically what he's saying is there's no such thing as a secret lefty except with secret lefties, I guess. Now the best way in my personal opinion to spot out Blue MAGA is that no matter how frustrated they pretend to be with the Liberal Party and with their ruling class, they will always, always, always encourage people to stay within that party. Conservatives do the exact same thing. Now moving on to Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner might be the actual emperor of shitlibs. As you can see from this level of delusion right here, I can see the Dems holding the house for my house. I have no words. A little dating advice, I guess. Find a partner who looks at you the same way Rob Reiner looks at I guess the establishment Dems. Now moving swiftly along, I'd like to outline some behavior you can kind of expect from Blue MAGA if you run into them, because there are a lot of really weird tactics that don't really make a lot of sense unless you kind of remind yourself that the end game is to keep people within the duopoly at all costs. Now, this specific account was someone who I was clapping for spreading outright vaccine misinformation. Now, a lot of the time what's going to happen is once you beat one of these people at an argument, what they're going to do is they're going to opt for any number of tactics in order to get an optics win. So that basically they come off as the victor, at least visually, even when you're actually the one in the right. And I'll show an example of this. So what this person happened to do after I successfully disproved his several points is he started quote tweeting pretty much everything that I was saying. Yep, I'm not kidding. Those are literally all my tweets. I did make a video just for fun to kind of outline this, which is basically going through all the quote tweets that he made. These were like every single minute. It was incredible. But the point I'm making here is that once they don't have any talking points to fall back on, their next move is going to be to try and get as many optic wins as they possibly can. Because what they're trying to do once they've lost the actual facts of the matter is they're going to try and paint the best picture and kind of regain control of that narrative. Which basically brings me to like the Hail Mary of Blue MAGA, which is when they're unsuccessful in recapturing the narrative and they're looking bad optically, what they'll do is they'll find anything they can to personally attack you with. So right here, this person is bringing up my channel, I guess, as some kind of dunk. And basically what they'll do from there is they'll start attacking anything, any ammo they have on you personally. For example, a joke I made with a good friend of mine, of course, that's going to, I guess, get attacked. Another tactic as well is just blatant hypocrisy for the sake of landing any kind of dunk whatsoever, such as attacking someone's online presence and how many views or subscribers or what have you they have, when they have far less themselves. Now, some advice is, once they go the personal attack route, and they will, some of them actually might go all the way to like outright doxing you and pulling up your information. Try not to let it phase you. The worst thing you can possibly do is let them know that this is affecting you negatively. What you need to do in that moment is to figure out any aspect that is positive for this and keep the narrative firmly where it should be. Another great way to counter this as well is to bring it back to the point they're wrong about. Because what they're trying to do is kick up as much dust as possible to make you look bad and to make them look like the victor. So right here, you basically say he drank piss in a desert and will take any views to his channel. He hasn't eaten on weeks. We are doing a charitable thing. You're welcome. Now, the funny thing is, I've already explained to this guy multiple times that the videos I make are a hobby. I do it because I enjoy making videos, and I don't really care how many views they get. If one person watches a video and it's positive to them or beneficial in some certain way, that's kind of a W, and that's the way you got to look at any content creation, I personally believe. So what I basically did was I said, hey, exposure's exposure, like the exposure you gave me after getting triggered because you were wrong about COVID. And that's basically taking it all back to the original wound, so to speak, because all of this behavior happened after I was objectively correct on a fact, and instead of admitting like a normal human, you know what, thanks for correcting me, I was wrong, which is something I do all the time, he had to kick up dust because his narrative made him look embarrassed. Well, y'all, that is my thorough and hopefully helpful introduction to the wild and crazy world of Blue MAGA. In a lot of ways, they do, as I've kind of indicated, act pretty much the same way as Trump supporters, insofar as it's just another color that they're rooting for. However, at the end of the day, the most important thing I would like to convey to you is remember that we are, in fact, in a class war, not a culture war, and more so, and far more importantly, you should always think for yourself and stand by the values, policies, and principles that are personally important to you. This is a quote I made on Twitter today, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it because I don't have it up. But one of the biggest flaws I think human beings have is when it comes to their tribe and the truth. When these two things go to head, Most human beings will pick their tribe over the truth because of our innate social nature. So it's important to remember that, stick to your gut, and more so, to thine own self be true.